Hello everyone, what a fantastic session from Mavenir, and great to see that RCS is indeed something that small and medium-sized businesses should entertain. Now, next up, we have a session with IMI Mobile. I'm not the best chef in the world. I probably have a repertoire of about 5 things I can cook fairly well, but even I can follow a recipe. Now, there is no one magic silver bullet to acing business messaging, but education, as we've heard already throughout the panels today, is really, really important and a key thing. So MEF, in conjunction with IMI Mobile, are putting together some recipe cards. So joining Tim Green, MEF features editor. Hey, Tim, good to see you. Hiya.
Hi,
we have,
nice to be here.
Good to be here. We have Steve Godman and David Creasy Benjamin from IMI Mobile. Hello. Hi, chaps. Now, I noticed one thing. I must say something. Within MEF, since 2015, we've had the future. I think you know what I'm going to say next. We've had the Future of Messaging program. And miraculously, I see your title, David, is SVP Future of Messaging. And Steve, Development Director, Future of Messaging as well. But some very, very nice titles. I will leave you to it. This is Tim's session. Enjoy and have a great session. Bye.
No problem at all. Thank you, James.
Thanks. Great. Well, thank you very much, James. Good to be here. Looking forward to this crazy culinary session. You may be wondering why the hell all of the cooking metaphors for this session. And it goes back to a MEF Connect event that I did in autumn, where I interviewed a spokesperson from Google Business Messaging. And she was a great interviewee. And she walked through that particular channel, Google Business Messages. And it was very instructional because it was full of specific tips on setup for brands and features and benefits of that particular channel. And it started me thinking, and I had a chat with Dario and with IMI Mobile, and we sort of put our heads together and we were thinking, there's a lot of brands out there that, I mean, at the MEF, we talk about rich messaging and these kinds of things all the time, and take it for granted everybody knows all about them. But obviously brands, and we'll hear from Steve of his direct experience in this respect, don't always even know about this stuff. So really it's a presentation challenge. And we came up with this idea of simple messaging, single PDFs that are like messaging recipe cards, and that spell out the do's and don'ts and the features and the benefits and the setup for all of the different rich channels that we think brands should be getting involved with. So that was the concept. And today we're going to showcase and preview the cards that we've come up with, and we'll sort of formally launch them at a later date. And have a chat through the concept and the different channels, and then get some feedback from DCB and from Steve on their experience of talking to brands and their insights into what you can do with these different channels. So that's the setup. As with all of these sessions, please, if you've got a question, submit one. We'll have a look at those and we'll try and address those towards the end. And just a reminder, we've got till about 3 o'clock UK time, so we've got about 35 minutes for this session. So anyway, so welcome guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Hi Steve, hi DCB. I should just point out Steve had his vaccine at the weekend. So he's somebody that if you're worried about COVID, you can happily shake his hand and give him a kiss or anything like that, because he's not going to. He's not a risk. He's not a COVID risk, but he is quite poorly though. He is quite poorly, and he said that he's not his usual effervescent self because he's feeling the after effects of the AstraZeneca jab. So thanks for joining us anyway, Steve. Yeah, he said he doesn't have a lot of coffee. Yeah. So anyway, I'm sure he can still impart wisdom even in his vulnerable state. So first of all, Steve, these recipe cards, which we'll get to them in a minute. Why do you think they're a good concept? You're talking to a lot of brands. Why do you think we need something a bit more user friendly?
I think anything to make the awareness and the understanding of this marketplace easier to access is going to be a big help. I think picked up a few things this morning from various people, a couple of phrases I'm now going to steal and call my own. But Pardeep referred to big islands, which I love the idea of. The fact that we've suddenly got 7 or 8 marketing channels available to us almost overnight from a brand's perspective. It's like taking TV, radio, direct mail, email, and SMS and landing it in a marketing department and just expecting everybody to understand how to work it out. And quite frankly, we struggle as an industry. These channels aren't going away. In fact, there's likely to be more. And I think someone else mentioned, Milorad, I think it was, about consultancy. What we're doing as a business at the moment, and I guess all our contemporaries are doing, is doing a lot of education. I hear that word a lot. But actually, it's more consultancy. What do you want to do? What does your customer want to do? And then you need to choose the right channel. It's not a one size fits all. It's not use every one, but actually you might end up using them all for different things. And, it's a struggle for brands and agencies, most of which have not even heard of RCS. WhatsApp they're familiar with, but it's a real challenge. Yet that doesn't move anything away from the fact that it's a massive opportunity for brands and agencies.
What's your experience? Give us a typical experience of going to see a big brand and asking them about whether they considered this as an option. And,
going to see them over the last 12 months has been a challenge.
Well,
yeah, I'd love to be doing that. I think they're overwhelmed. They're currently overwhelmed with various marketing channels. Some brands have only just really got to grips with the concept of kind of personalized email marketing. If you look at the last 20 years of digital marketing, people have been talking about personalized email marketing and CRM for decades now. And I challenge most people to find an email in their inbox that actually has any personalization in it other than their name. And, this overwhelm is proving that despite the potential upsides, where does it fit in? Where? How can we find money for this? It looks great. To Angel's point earlier, yes, it looks amazing. I think once you can sell the idea really easily, but once you actually get into the logistics, the operational elements of it, it becomes a bigger challenge. And I'm very fortunate because in this team I've got people like DCB who understand those better than most. But most brands and agencies, and I've only got back into this in the last year or so, even very senior strategists at big digital agencies on a global basis have not even heard of RCS, for example. So not only are you selling a great new kind of opportunity, you're actually doing this whole thing about what the hell is it? How does it work? Who can send to who? What systems do I need? So, if you think about the market, we are probably at the beginning of a 20-year cycle. None of these channels are going away for the next 10 years. Unless Google and Facebook pack up and leave, we're stuck with them. And it's going to be a long, slow burn, but I think one worth fighting for, quite honestly.
So, David, don't worry, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just quickly, Steve. So, nearly everybody in the world now uses WhatsApp. So when you go to see a big brand and you're speaking to their CMO or whatever, they're undoubtedly someone who uses WhatsApp. How frequently are they aware of a business version of WhatsApp that their brand can use?
Well, in our market, not many. Right. We do a lot of work in the automotive sector. I saw a great presentation from the Mo at Nissan earlier today, and he was showing a really good execution of a WhatsApp campaign for Nissan. That we're not there yet here. It hasn't started to take hold. So, what we as a global company have to counter is that WhatsApp is phenomenally well adopted here and in India, but in the US, it's not the channel of choice. So, brands are looking at all these different global markets and thinking, what horse do I back here? It's a great time because, as a service provider, we can give this consultancy, which, at the moment isn't something you can really charge, a huge margin on, but we can give this consultancy and hopefully get people on that journey. I hate to use the J word, but that journey, because unfortunately it is going to be one. But it's incredibly exciting because every deployment we do, we learn something, and the data we're pulling off just bolsters the whole market, because a few percentage points here and there en masse, change the economics of mobile, and ultimately this is all about mobile marketing.
Okay, well, that's great. And so obviously what we're trying to do with these cards is to make it easier for brands to understand what the opportunity is. So you can see here, what we've done is put some cheesy culinary iconography around this. But you can see that what we're essentially doing is giving a single snapshot, a single page digestible snapshot on different platforms. And those platforms are Apple Business Chat. So Google Business Message, as we said, Google Verified Calling, Google Verified SMS, RCS, and WhatsApp. So we'll come back to looking more closely at those cards. But David, can you tell us why we chose those 6 particular channels, and which ones we could have chosen and why we didn't do those in this first iteration?
Absolutely. So what we tried to do is we took a look at the explosion of new channels that are out there. So, I mean, we've got our eye on 15 at the moment. So, we talk with the ones that everybody's heard of. So your SMS, your email, your voice. And we've then started the ones that we're starting to look at natively, because they're gaining traction within the industry. They're gaining traction with real use cases across the globe, and they are, as a customer service focused company, they're the ones that are focused on customer service. So Steve and I talk to people a lot about marketing, but we also spend a huge amount of time talking to people about service and how a customer can reach out when they want to. So trying to get the balance right with those things, we decided we had to have channels for Android. We had to have the channel for iOS. And what we did is we picked the ones we hoped would have a really broad spectrum of use cases. So these are the ones that perhaps we spend the most time talking about, certainly the ones that have the most brand recognition. Some of them are so new they don't yet. But we took a really close look at Viber. We wanted to look at Line. We wanted to look at WeChat. And I would love to think that we're going to carry on and get recipe cards for all of those channels. I mean, I've seen certainly the representatives from Viber today. There's some lovely stuff that they're doing that I'd love to talk to them about. So I think those recipe cards, this is only the starting point, because they need to exist as these channels continue to grow, the use cases continue to widen. We have to have a succinct entry point that we can flash up and start as an introductory piece, as Steve said, starting people on that journey. So the channels will broaden, the information will broaden, but I think these 6 gives a happy balance across the majority of the handsets that are out there and a wide selection of verticals and use cases.
Okay, well, let's get back to them then. So Apple Business Chat. David, why don't you tell us briefly about why a brand should be using Apple Business Chat?
So Apple Business Chat is the channel that is designed specifically for iOS devices. And it is Apple's way of opening up conversations with brands, or on behalf of brands with end users. It is, of course, as only Apple can do, built directly into the OS. It is integrated into every part of it. And of course, it is immediately available on virtually every Apple device. It has some wonderful features that you can make use of to really open up your customer conversations. They're features that Apple users are used to. So we'll come on to some of the other channels later on where we look at carousels or we look at image cards and we look at buttons, whereas Apple's way of doing things is rotating list pickers, and they've adopted that in the messaging channel. You can trigger a conversation on it in a plethora of ways, but one of the huge advantages of Apple Business Chat is it'll offer itself to you at the right moment. So if you try to call a company and they've registered for Business Chat, it will make a suggestion that you might want to chat to them by message instead. And as we saw with all the statistics that were being brought up earlier, people would far rather message a company than they would call them. It's really open. It's really quite simple to use. When you've got the right partner, you can actually sign up with your Apple ID as a business, and you can be set up and running reasonably quickly. The key thing is it is designed for service. Apple always differentiate themselves on the service their customers get access to. So there's always got to be a real person there. There's always got to be a fallback to a person chatting. So what we find when we go and talk to brands, we say, okay, so what conversations are you having and how are you having them? As soon as they've indicated they've got a chat channel or that's where they want to go to, Apple is absolutely going to pop to or float towards the top of the channels we want to put into the mix.
So I believe you can't start a conversation through Apple Business Chat, as well as you talking about having to have a human agent rather than a bot. Is that correct?
So we'll touch on this probably on each of the channels. So for the first interaction, the customer has to reach out to the business.
Right.
So that's how Apple define it. You need to start the conversation, and they can do that in a number of ways. Whenever you register for Business Chat, you'll get a little URL that you can place in your website that can be placed essentially into your app, or can be placed anywhere that's accessible on an iOS browser. Customer clicks that, it will open up the standard message box at the bottom. So it will look just like you're about to send a message to a friend of yours, except with the branded verified experience. And they click and send the first message in. Once the first message has been received and you've had that initial conversation, you will as an enterprise, or your partner will store for you the anonymous ID token that identifies that particular person. You marry it to your record so you know who they are, just as you would with, say, a push notification.
Right.
And you can then, within the terms and conditions of Apple, you can actually then reach back out at a later date with a notification or with something else. But the customer must start that conversation with a click. Okay. Plethora of ways to get people to do that.
Okay, and they can, the other great benefit is that they can, it's integrated with Apple Payment as well, isn't it? And appointments.
Oh, absolutely.
Things like that.
Integrated essentially with everything on the phone, but Apple Pay is the feature that will really does make it stand out, and it's one of the reasons it was picked as the image on the card.
Yeah. Okay. So RCS, obviously, everyone who's been watching so far will have a good insight into RCS. But let's just briefly, walk us through what the particular features are of an RCS integration.
So RCS. And this is the hill I will probably die on, is the richest of all of these channels. It is going to be operator driven. I know there's a long conversation we can have about that, but it's going to be operator driven in each country, and it is going to be the default messaging standard on Android devices at the very least. So as businesses are getting to grips with SMS and starting to have that conversation, RCS is the pigs that will naturally take over from that in terms of the evolution of that channel. It has the richest set of features in terms of how you can use the real estate of a handset to really open up the customer experience. So the types of rich cards that you're able to send across, the buttons that you're able to place in there, the carousels left and right, and the ability to be able to guide a customer or offer up a guided customer experience so they can the customer can find what they need as simply as possible, but the business can get them to the outcome that they want to as quickly as possible. It is taking longer to get the level of reach that ABC does, because of course ABC is closed, so Apple could release it to basically every device overnight. RCS, as we all know, has been around for a number of years, but is constantly growing. I mean, I think looking at the recent growth in India, certainly in Brazil and Mexico, and indeed the UK, where all of the operators are now forcing out their their updates, that is becoming less of a problem. I think Nick had the most accurate figures as ever this morning. But RCS is completely open. You know, in terms of what the networks will allow over it, whatever services, so we can use it for gaming companies that are able to use it, whereas some of the other channels you're not able to. And yes, the opportunities, the craft, the space that it offers is huge.
Okay, so broadly we can say, you know, Apple is closed and controlled, but it offers a lot of specific benefits. RCS has the most features. WhatsApp, which we're coming on to now, I'm assuming, you know, that's kind of the great benefit of WhatsApp, I would imagine, is user awareness and reach. So tell us a little bit about the main features there.
So WhatsApp, yes, you don't have to tell anybody what WhatsApp is. Everybody's, I think virtually everybody, even though those few of us that don't use it, or those few of you that don't use it, are absolutely aware of what it is. It is, of course, owned and operated by Facebook, so benefits from all of their ecosystem in terms of verification, in terms of getting you set up. You know, businesses will be familiar with some of the interfaces that they need to log into and go and get hold of. It is encrypted between the business or the business's partner and the user, so it's a huge benefit. It allows for an open conversation. So you can send any media essentially that you like, along with text. It's easily integrated because once you have the right partner with the API, actually all of that is done at the edge. So all of your customer journey stuff can be done either in your internal systems or through your partners. And yes, virtually everybody has it. One of the latest things that WhatsApp have allowed is that you can come and you can check, first of all, whether a telephone number you're trying to reach out to is registered on WhatsApp. And if it is, then you can reach out. So they've married that feature. They've separated it out from just the send mode, which is what it was going to be like. So they're starting to change their ways to allow more outbound conversation. It is not as open as RCS though. WhatsApp, again, fundamentally, they want to be a service channel. So they want the end user to start the conversation, whether that's by sending a message in, discovering the business that way, whether it's from a link which has been embedded into the website. But they don't insist on it. There is a method to have your outbound message approved. As long as you have consent from your users to be able to contact them, you can initiate a conversation with an outbound message. But those outbound messages do have to be approved through the WhatsApp process. Whereas if the customer starts a conversation with you, you can have the conversation back with them, and you can then cover any topic that the customer has brought up, and you can send the information back. They like to avoid flat out marketing use cases. It is more towards the service end of the spectrum.
Okay. All right, and so the next one is Google Business Messages, which I mentioned earlier, and it's a little bit different because there's no kind of inbox here. It's not the destination where these conversations happen is a little different. So why don't you walk us through that? This
is a really cool opportunity. I think it opens up the conversations you can have with a brand and the teams that you want to go and talk to. If you want to go and talk to the search engine optimization team, this is the channel to talk about, because what Google have done is really to open up the organic search to be the trigger of a conversation. So when you sign up for Google Business Message, if your end user Googles you, and I use it as a verb, much as I'll get shouted at, if your business card comes up or the location has attached, you will be offered the message button. Now, what you can see in the screenshot on the card is actually what Google have done is they've used Google Maps as the message bearer. So it makes no business difference to you guys or to an enterprise to be able to set that up. But what it means is you can Google search on an iOS or an Android device and you can start the conversation. So the card that pops up there, you can see you click that message. It opens up in the notifications tab within the Maps app. And then actually you've got a really open and rich channel to have an automated conversation or a conversation over with a chat agent. It opens up carousels. It offers up conversational suggestions. It's not quite as embedded into the phone, or can't quite access all the features that RCS can access or iOS, but it can. The immediacy of being able to have a conversation from a search object means the advocacy of the conversation goes right through the roof, because the customer has reached out for this specific piece of information.
Yeah.
So if you can build the right chat around that, we've seen some wonderful use cases actually around COVID being built within this. So sort of countering false information, and being actually, when you reach out to try and book the shop, which has laid Steve so low, actually there are loads of FAQs and sort of COVID information that you can that you can immediately go back with. Again, Google wants ultimately there to be a real person to fall back on. So within your business's opening hours, you're looking to have a chat agent available to finalize those conversations. But actually up front, you can do a huge amount of automation, give the customer the right thing to finish a follow-up from their query, and actually drive a really powerful conversation. Final thing to say, you can follow up with a notification as long as you and the customer have chatted, said something to each other at least once within 30 days. You can still use it to send notifications. Although personally, I find getting to a new notification, if you miss it on the screen, I find it a little difficult to find in the Maps app. It's not perfect. I've given that information to Google, and I'll probably get text messages on it to be quiet. But if you are starting the conversation as a customer, it is absolutely fantastic.
So just quickly then, so the image there we've got is, somebody's Google homepage, and it's very intuitive to send a message. What about if you have an ongoing conversation with a brand, and maybe it's got details in there that you want to follow up later? How do you keep those conversations? It's harder to understand that than if it's in an inbox somewhere.
So there is an inbox, but it's held within the Maps app. So when these recipes cards come out, one of the really cool things about it is those QR codes do work. So you'll be able to scan them with the relevant device, and you'll be able to try a showcase for each of the channels.
Yeah.
And what you'll find with Business Message when you scan it is you'll open a location. And on that location, you click the message, and that will open up the screen for you to have your chat. But what that'll mean, next time you go back to your Maps app, at the bottom, you'll find two tabs. One on the right will be called Notifications. Click on that. And instead of having one tab, which says is Notifications, you'll find a second tab, which says, I want to say Messages or Inbox. And I'm ashamed to say I don't know which one, but it will say one of those. Open it up, and it looks just like any other messaging inbox. You'll have a list of the known entities that you've engaged with. Of course, the difference here will be it will only be businesses.
Right. And that doesn't require you to be logged into Maps or wherever you are.
So it will make use of your Google account information. You do have to be logged in for it to work. To go back, I believe, because one of the advantages we've talked about we haven't, but throughout the day we've talked about personalization and hyper personalization. If you don't know the customer you're starting a conversation with, that's really quite difficult. With a channel like this, Google know your first name, so there are ways to insert that from the account and start them in the conversation straight away. So you can make that first introductory journey really, really personal.
Great. Okay. Well, we're closing in on, we've got about 8 minutes left, so let's just go through the last two, which we can kind of do together, I think, really.
Yes.
So it's Google Verified SMS and Google Verified Calling. This is more about identification and avoiding spam and so on than it is necessarily about rich messaging per se, but just quickly talk us through these two.
Well, reason to include these two is messaging. There are certain sections of messaging that have quite a bad reputation. We see a lot of stories around smishing, around those kind of attempts, and all of the rich channels have a verification element, have a security element, and do push that forward as rightly they should, because to keep and consumer confidence is absolutely key. And what our friends at Google have done with these two channels is to add that trust and brand awareness for two of the core channels. SMS, and voice. So does only work on Android, and it is Android messages or the Android dialer. The dialer is pretty much default on most Android phones. Android message is getting more and more prevalent. But essentially what it does, it takes your existing phone numbers, so your existing text number or your existing phone number, and you can register that as yours with Google, with your brand, go through the verification steps, exchange certain security parameters so no one else can do that on your behalf. And what you then do is when you trigger your standard SMS campaigns or you trigger your voice campaigns is effectively you send a call at the same time, say, I'm going to be calling this phone. And the two apps on the device, so the Messages app or the dialer, look out for that call coming in. So they recognize that sort of pre-configured information. So what they display to the person at the other end is your brand. I think I haven't quite got it up on screen, but you'll see on the example on both those cards, there is the tick that we are all training ourselves means verified and trusted. You can click in and get additional information, of course, but the names that you start to appear, you'll see the business. I think some of the stats around calls, certainly the pickup rate goes through the roof. When you know who the brand is that's calling, we're all really quite fed up of spam calls or cold calls. So the difference that makes is huge. And for banking, for finance, for any of those type verticals, the verified SMS is a lovely starting position. Banks do tend to be a little bit slower in adopting new channels, whereas actually they're all using SMS a huge amount. I was listening to the fraud chat earlier, and banks are not going to stop using SMS on OTPs anytime soon. But what I'd happily recommend that they do is to plug this API along the side. It isn't everybody that are going to get it yet, but for the people that it does, it really does make a difference to know that that payment is coming from your bank, that it is that verified identity. So it does make a huge difference. And the way that you go and build it is incredibly simple. So actually you can build it with very small changes to your infrastructure, or if you use a partner, the right partner with the CPaaS provision, they should essentially be able to turn it on for you.
Okay. Well, that's a great summary and a nice segue, because we've got only a few minutes left. But to go back to Steve, obviously all of these channels, if a brand wants to explore them, then it makes sense to go to a messaging specialist, a CPaaS provider, such as RMA. Others are available, of course. What can you, in a few minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, can you talk us through how a brand can get involved and what kind of fees are involved? Not specifically, but because obviously all of these channels have different fee structures. Some don't have any at all. So quick walkthrough.
Yeah. And I think that's the problem and the opportunity. The opportunity is there's all these new channels, and the problem is there's all these new channels. And I think we as service providers, as we're called in this sort of world, need to, have some empathy for that. But basically, in our world, what we do is we go in to see a brand or an agency, and we pick a particular use case that we think would get value out of, let's say RCS. Then we typically would design a sort of a use case or a flow for them. Let's say it was for booking test drives for a auto brand. One of the things we're doing at the moment, which is, I think, a very positive step overall in terms of building awareness, is we're talking to agencies and we're talking to the ad tech ecosystem, so that we can try and integrate at sort of point of, where the consumer gets the attention, which is on, an advert or a display ad. For us, we simply would architect a flow for them. We would run a test, etc., and normally run some kind of pilot, to a small audience, for free or very close to free. Ultimately, moving forward, you buy our software. We have a platform called Connect, which is, I guess, the sales pitch, but it allows you to build all these customer journeys agnostic of the channel that you're operating on. So, what do? We sell software. We sell access to these channels. I won't go into detail, but, that's a software license that's based on volume. So the more you do, the more cost effective it gets, like any digital channel. But the point I'll make is everyone talks about cost. And this is really frustrating because in the 6 months I've been working with DCB and the team, and the perhaps 100 pitches we've done, I would say cost has come out only about 20% of those phone calls, because people are overwhelmed and they see the potential. The cost, I think we need to get out of that conversation, because it's not a cost-based model; it's an opportunity-based one. And it's like, know the cost of everything, the value of nothing. If you understand the value, the cost actually becomes a byproduct, because if you look at something like a B2B lead that RCS can help drive conversion of, which could be worth hundreds or thousands of pounds, the cost of doing it is completely obfuscated. So, it's complex and it's contentious, but if someone starts talking to me about price, I'm probably talking to the wrong person.
Okay, well, we could get, obviously, there's another conversation to be had about, obviously, the different channels have different charging models, and I don't know how that's reflected in your fees, but we've got no time to talk about that now, because we're at the end of our allotted time. So, DCB, Steve, thank you so much for explaining everything so clearly. It's great to have worked with you on these cards, and we'll be launching them formally shortly. And hopefully, we can do our little bit to get brands more aware of this incredible rich messaging opportunity. So with that, I will say thank you to the two of you. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of the sessions.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye, everybody.